Hi everybody, welcome back to Our Future 101. And today we've got not a special guest, but another host on the podcast. So Leah decided to get more involved and she decided to be part of the team. And she's going to be a co-host, so she will be doing hosting part-time. So Leah, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about that first?
Yeah, so I was here a few weeks ago as a guest. I spoke about my story, and afterward, I was already getting more involved in CSUN at that point, and this was just another way to get more involved, to be a part of a change, a movement, and it's been great. Been great to be a part of this team.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
So today I wanted to talk about how the mandates are ending provincially across Canada. And specifically Ontario, we're taking off the mask mandate, we're taking off the vaccination mandate from the government. However, the world has not changed. And quite frankly, a lot of people think that this is the time where, things are changing, everything's getting better, everything's opening up, and the fight is over and we don't really need to do anything about it. But the reality is different, and we're here to present a different reality to you, exactly what's happening, and what to expect for the future. So what are your first thoughts on this whole thing now?
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with like-minded people. They're like, yay, the mask mandate's over. Yay. I don't have to present my proof of vaccination at a restaurant. We've won.
Yeah.
Well, look federally. Look what's happening there. We have not won. This is still happening, and the problem is the mandates haven't been denounced. It's not like the government has come and been like, you know what, we have lied to you. We weren't right. We weren't right at all. Instead, they're like, oh, what I've heard them say in press conferences is, this is because of your efforts and the cases are lower and stuff like that. So people feel like, oh, we've worked for this by complying. And how is that helping us? Just because the mandates themselves are ending, just because your life might be more convenient now, that mindset, that collective mindset is still there.
Yeah.
If anything, worse as a population, because, who's going to be still wearing a mask and who's not going to be wearing a mask? It's like a whole other divide all of a sudden.
Yeah, and you're right about this. In fact, the narrative has not changed. Like you mentioned, they did not come out publicly to denounce what they did and to say, like, this was all terrible things that we did. Here's the people responsible. They're locked up or they're going to be punished. They're going to court and to serve their sentences. None of that's happening. There's no victory in this. In fact, what's happening is the situation is getting even worse now. And I'm going to explain why I think it's getting a lot worse than it was before. Because before, people were fighting this. We had a lot of people standing up, a lot of people talking publicly about this, the restrictions and how terrible everything is. But now all of a sudden, now that they announced, okay, the mandates are going away, but everybody else can still implement it. And good job, everybody. Look how nice and compliant you are. And you're such great citizens. And so everybody feels like, okay, well, this is going to be over. And now they're not fighting. So why is this worse? Because the people who are part of our organization, people who are part of other organizations that were originally fighting this, feel like they have no more fight left. So they can go to their regular jobs and they can go to their restaurants, right? But what's the reality? The reality is that you still cannot go to school. Can you still enroll without showing your vaccination? Can you still go and work for a corporate job?
Nope.
Most likely not.
No, they haven't. It's not really over yet. They can implement this back whenever they want. Until they, like we said, until they come out and say we were wrong, this fight is far from over. Yeah. And yes, you can enjoy the little mundane things and, the stress of, let's say you go to a store and you're not wearing a mask. Maybe you won't be yelled at as much. Right. But at the same time, this collective mindset still exists. So people have to sit back and assess, what am I doing to fight this in my world? Why have I backed down? I can't. You can't back down yet. We're not done.
Yeah, it's not easy to see because you can still go outside and like I mentioned, you can do the little things like going to your favorite restaurant without showing proof of vaccination, most likely, but still some restaurants will probably implement it. And you can go to some public places without it, absolutely. But that's not the end of this, because what's actually happening behind the scenes that nobody's paying attention to is that the federal government has not removed their Vax Pass, and they have no plans to remove the Vax Pass. So you still cannot travel, you cannot get a higher education, and you cannot work the job that you dream of.
You can't even leave the country. We are the only country that I believe I'm correct, that we're the only country in the world that you can't leave without showing proof of vaccination.
I'm not sure. Maybe Australia is pretty bad too.
Yeah, I've heard that. I'm not sure if that's for sure factually
But most
correct.
of Europe you can test and leave. But that's not even the thing that we want, right? It's not like we're advocating for, okay, give me a test so I can leave.
Yeah, no.
That's the thing. We want the narrative to completely crumble, and the way to do that is to change the narrative, to change people's perceptions of reality, to tell them, hey, this is a lie and this is correct, and to completely change how people think about this whole thing, and to let them know you've been tricked. This is something that has been implemented by the government in order to gain control over you, to gain your assets, to take away your businesses, and to pretty much ruin the middle class.
Yeah.
And that's what's been going on for the last couple of years. So Australia needs a vaccine to travel. New Zealand also needs a vaccine to travel, just like Canada. The US needs a vaccine in most places, probably in those blue states where the liberals are in control. And yeah, so Europe is allowed for testing, but
Oh, no, I meant like to leave the country, not
Yeah.
necessarily you mean to leave.
I mean to leave the country.
Oh,
Yeah.
so I'm wrong. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good
so
to acknowledge.
and so why is this important to know is because this stuff is happening globally. It's not like we're Canada, we're the only shitty place around.
Oh yeah, no, for sure
right?
not.
This is all happening globally, and a lot of places you cannot leave, you cannot travel, you cannot go anywhere. So all the federal things are still happening, despite maybe your local provinces or your local municipalities are dropping stuff. But that's just, it's kind of like a Trojan horse, because then they tell you, oh, everything's great, everything's amazing, and then boom, you get a Vax Pass implemented by the federal government because you haven't been paying attention. You stop fighting, you stop resisting.
That's what they want. They want us, they're like, oh, then we're going to be happy and, celebrate that the government has granted us freedom again.
Yeah.
That's not the case. We need to grant it ourselves. We need to take that back.
That's
we
right.
can't let them do it for us.
Yeah, and the thing that's happening with the masks and this Vax Pass is that there's going to be a further separation in society, because now there's going to be a divide. Oh, you wear a mask? That means you're a good citizen. You don't wear a mask? That means you're a shit citizen. You cannot get a job in the corporate world. Oh, that's just because you're unvaccinated. That's you problem, right? How often do we go to campuses, right, and we speak to people, and then it's like they refer to us as like, oh, it's you problem, like,
Yeah.
oh, for you people, I would suggest you do this, or for you people, the situation sucks, right? They don't feel like it's their problem.
Mm-hmm.
But
so
the
then
point
they don't
is,
care.
yeah, they obviously don't care because they don't feel like it's their problem to fix. But the thing is that it is their problem as well. As soon as it hits their barrier or their line that they drew, maybe it's on the third dose, or maybe it's when the social credit system rolls around. And they say, oh, no, I can't do that. Well, it's going to be too late to fight this because it's been implemented, right?
Yeah.
So what we're advocating for is for you to open your eyes and to realize that this is not ending, and this is not going away until we win, until they publicly say that this was all a huge mess that we've done and we've caused so much suffering, and people are going to be punished and they will face the consequences for what they did. Until that happens, we have not won. And don't think for a second that the government is easing on restrictions because of truckers or you went and protested a couple of times. That's just not happening. It's not realistic to think that way. Don't be ignorant. Get involved and get to work, because we have a lot of work ahead of us. It's easy to get involved. Send us a message at cson.ca. Mm-hmm. And we got to get going on this. So tell me a little bit more. I mean, you mentioned that you wanted to get more involved and you wanted to participate more within our organization. Mm-hmm. So I think it would be good for viewers to hear why you wanted to get involved more, especially now that the mandates are ending. And so tell me a bit about that. What was your thinking when we proposed that you could do a podcast with us?
Yeah, I was very nervous to do the podcast, but I was a guest here, and that, you know, empowered me. And, you know, to see what's going on, and to, you know, I started off as somebody who was very afraid of speaking up. Like a few months ago, I could never even imagine that I would be speaking on a podcast like this. You know, I was very worried about like what people would think of me. But, you know, what I've been through in the last few months has shown me that my individual struggle it's valid, but it's not the only struggle that I'm fighting. There's a greater struggle that I'm involved in. And I feel like it's my obligation, in a way. I've made it my obligation to be a part of this movement. Because when I look back in a few years' time, I want to know that I did something to fight back. And, you know, I hope it's going to be effective. I hope I'm contributing, you know, enough in some way. I don't know, like, in the end, you know, how much we'll do, but I know that we're doing something, and it's just better than sitting back. We're fighting this, you know, we are making a stand. We're showing up. We're on campus. I've started having the uncomfortable conversations with people. It's taking time, but it's nerve-wracking, you know, to look at somebody in the eye and say, yeah, like, I'm against the mandates. But it's not as scary as I thought it would be. And it's very empowering. I know a lot of people feel like they're not in the position to do that. I felt like that too, but I recommended it. You're staying true to yourself, and being on this podcast, it's an avenue for me to be a part of that change.
Yeah, you've got a platform that will support you doing it. And if you do get rejected by somebody who's, you know, not doesn't like your views or doesn't like your opinions, that's fine. You got a whole group of people who do love you for what you do, and they do accept you for who you are.
Yeah.
Right?
It's taken some time. Like, I'm still, you know, still devastated when people, you know, don't like me because of what I believe, and I'm still in that process of people finding out and, you know, judging me, and I feel worse, but I'm much more strong in my convictions than I used to be. I used to be very vulnerable to opposing sides, even though I had my convictions, but now they're straight, and I know that I'm right. In my mind, I'm right. This is what I believe, and I have the right to believe it. And I have, you know, my own process and my own evidence to believe what I believe. You know, in my personal experience with my adverse reaction, viewers, if you would watch my, you know, I go in depth about this in my previous podcast, but I had an adverse reaction to my first dose. And, you know, had I, you know, given up and gotten my second, I could be really sick right now. God forbid, I could be more sick than I am. I could have worse reaction than I had. And that's what a lot of people in my life wanted me to do. And so for me, standing up and advocating for people in my position and similar positions is a way to reclaim my power. So long, people were trying to take it away from me, hold it back. And I was begging the system to accommodate me. But that's not the way. It's the easy way, and it feels good to, you know, live a normal life, quote unquote, but it's just not normal yet. You know, these accommodations, they're not all that they're, you know, cracked up to be. You still feel like a danger to society, and you still feel different. And that's just not true. I'm not dangerous. Yeah,
we're healthy individuals, and we know when we're sick and when we're not.
Yeah.
It's not for others to decide. That's awesome. So you've been empowered, and you decided to take action because, and like you said, it's empowering. And the famous quote is, and I say this all the time, action breeds confidence and courage. And inaction breeds doubt and suffering. Something like that. Something along those lines.
I like that one.
Yeah. And so by taking action, by getting involved, by actually contributing to society, you're going to feel more confident and more like yourself, that you're not actually like pretending to be somebody else just to fit, you know, with others. There is another community out there in which does believe the same things as you. We're all like-minded people that have the same perceptions about today's world.
Yeah. It's hard to be in those spaces though. Like I acknowledge that when you're in those spaces where, you know, you're not with like-minded people, you want to be invisible. It's an instinct, and it still happens to me. to come out with this and have people like look at you weird and, you know, yell at you, I've had it, or like, you know, really just blatantly disagree, call me horrible things I've had before. It's just, it doesn't feel good, and in a way you want to just be like everyone else, but it's not worth it in the long run. And when you stay true to yourself, because you can't rid how you feel inside. Yeah. So when you stay true to that, you just feel more authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to go about life. But I wanted to ask, what do you predict will happen in the next 5 years to Canada, to Ontario, to universities? What's life looking like for us in 5 years from now?
Yeah. You know, I want to be as hopeful as I can. However, if we happen to not, you know, if it happens to not be enough and we don't win, I'm fighting as much as I can, and we all are. Yeah. But we're heading down a dangerous path. You know, this whole notion of disclose your vaccination status, to go to school, to enter a restaurant, it's even if you believe in the vaccination and, or, you know, you support it, that's your right. You know, everyone should have that right. But if, you know, this whole notion that it's mandated, that people can ask you, that's dangerous, because what happens now is our entire, it sets a very dangerous precedent for the healthcare system. So, and for the world at large, because this has been affecting everything outside of healthcare. So now, you know, what's next? What else are they, what other shot are they going to mandate? What other treatment are they going to mandate? Yeah. You know, how much more control can they take? Because, you know, they've already said you can't go here and you can't go there, and we're going to lock you down and you have to stay at home and you have to wear a mask. What else can they do that could be worse, that could affect more people?
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what could happen, but if we don't fight, I know for sure if we don't fight the universities fight, they can keep this for as long as they want. And even if they drop it, you know, let's say they say, you know what, it's not a threat, you know, COVID isn't as prevalent anymore, so we're going to drop the mandate. Who says they can't take control like that again?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a mentality issue, yes, as much as a policy. It's not just about policy. That's why we can't give up just because the provincial mandates are done. Even if the federal, please God, the federal mandates will be over too soon enough. But even if they're over, if we don't, you know, oppose this idea of control over society to such an extent, this could happen again.
Yeah, and that's the way. So there's two parts to this that I wanted to mention. One part is that the narrative is not shifted. So what this means is basically the government. It's like a big power move for the government, because they have fucked up society so much to this point that they can just say, all right, we're not going to enforce it anymore. We're just going to watch here and watch you do it to yourself. Because that's what's happening, right? Some businesses will still enforce it.
Yeah.
The institutions will still enforce it. The corporations will still enforce it, because it's like almost, you know, you're considered a higher institution or whatever. You know, you're considered more privileged or more prestigious, that's the word, if you are implementing these things, because everybody who goes to university is clean and COVID free, whatever they're advocating for, right? And so because the narrative is not shifted, it doesn't matter if it's mandated or not, because the people will do it to themselves. And that's exactly what's happening, is they'll take away these things, but you're still going to have people enforcing masks, right? Especially if you go to a clinic or a dental appointment. Imagine coming into a dental appointment, you have to wear a mask, and then you just sit down with your mouth wide open as they're working on you.
That's happened to me before.
It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but they're still doing it for the COVID theater, right? And it's going to continue to happen unless the narrative has changed. And how do you shift the narrative? Well, you have to get involved with communities like CSUNT. You have to get involved with communities that are completely rejecting this narrative and living life like 2019. Right? So you have to show the normalcy. This is the normal way to go. And you have to lead by example. Get involved and get going on different organizations that are supporting this sort of narrative. And quite frankly, there are many organizations doing that, especially in Ontario. As most organizations are still trying to weave their way around and do, you know, exemptions and lawsuits and all of this.
Oh, yeah.
But lawsuits not going to help you because the narrative's not changed, right?
People's minds aren't changed.
People's minds aren't changed.
People want these restrictions. Like, there's this whole notion, you mentioned this briefly, of like, when the mask mandate ends, masks aren't just, a health and safety thing. It's very much, it's a if you wear a mask, you're seen as like virtuous and moral, and you care about the health and safety. It's like a social thing. There's a stigma attached to it, whether you wear one or not. So if you do wear one, then you're seen as, oh, you care about others, you protect others. And if you don't, oh, you don't care about health and safety. And that the implications of that. So somebody makes a choice, right? They're not mandated anymore. And in a way, it's worse because, now that worse with regard to like, people, the conflict between people, because now that it's not mandated, people, if they choose, people will choose to still wear one. And there's going to be this trend of like, look, I've chosen to wear one. And that's the indoctrination that's, come off. Like, the government's like, oh, we're done here. We've done it. People are doing it to themselves. And you know what? If people want to wear one, that's their right. I'm not going to tell people not to, of course. But if you don't want to, they're not going to, but now people are going to look at you like, oh, so you're choosing not to now. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not mandated. Oh, so you were only wearing it because it's mandated, you didn't want to? Oh, well, yeah, I guess I didn't want to. You didn't want to wear one? Like, people are gonna start turning on each other more, and they're not even being forced to anymore. They can't use that as an excuse. They actually want to. Yeah. It's a complete like belief that they've formed because of the indoctrination that they've, or it's their belief, but they're pushing it so hard on others.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to fight at the universities. Like, why are we specifically targeting universities at the moment, right? Because if this shit doesn't change, each generation from now on, it's going to be coming out masked, vaxxed, and compliant, and also yelling at other people to put their masks on and get their jab, right? So that's why it's so important to really hone in on the universities and tell them, no, this whole narrative needs to change. The people need to realize that this has been a complete trick by the government and the institutions to play on us, to take away our power and to take everything away. Now, I wanted to find out, can we look into if China is implementing vax pass and mask policies, things like that? Because the way I see it is, like, going back to the 5-year plan, like what's happening in 5 years, what's happening in the next 10 years or so, right? The way I see it is that Canada, the West, is heading towards the direction that we will be forcing ourselves to be compliant and to be nice to the government and the authorities, because that is virtue. And what's happening now in China with their social credit system is that people love it, right? It's or their vaccination or their masking is, I believe in most, we're gonna double check the information, but I believe in most places in China, there's no vax pass and there is no mask mandate. But 90%, 99% of Chinese citizens do it. Without being forced, they do it to themselves, and they continuously enforce each other because one is going to, is going to go to an institution and tell them, oh, that person was not wearing a mask, or that person was not doing this. And that's what's happening in Canada now, that the neighbors are going to be telling on each other, oh, I think they're unvaxxed, oh, I think they're not wearing a mask. And the citizenry will be forcing themselves. You don't even need the government to tell you the rules. They know the rules, and they're going to be enforcing it on others.
Yeah. The government's really like, my work here's done.
Yeah.
They did it. It's, people don't realize how psychological this has been. A lot of people thought, oh, these mandates exist because of the cases and because of, the danger. But, when the danger ceases, we know this isn't true, but, a lot of people think that if the danger ceases, oh, they're going to lift them and we're going to be safe because we worked for that. But that's not the case. You don't think the government is loving this, that we're all turning on each other and that we're, listening and complying to everything they say? Like, this isn't going to go away.
Yeah, so just getting that information about China. They don't have a vax pass in terms of traveling abroad, but they're very strict on the non-domestic travelers. So, travelers that are coming into China from other countries, they have to be vaxxed. They have to, have all their documents, so to speak. But China's testing, so they're not they're not asking for proof of vaccination in order to travel anywhere. But hey, 99% of the population is going to be vaxxed, is going to be disclosing and waving it around. Oh, look, I'm a good compliant citizen. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening in Canada, and that's the way I see our future going. I mean, do you want a social credit system implemented? Do you want the government to... And with it's really scary with the social credit system, because like the one they have in China is that, let's say you hang out with the wrong group, or you post something wrong on social media, or maybe you do a podcast on something that we're discussing and critiquing the government. Boom, there's a switch to turn off your finances, your bank accounts are seized, right? Everything could be turned off in a moment because the government has control over that. Mm-hmm. So we're heading in that direction, and don't think that this is being dropped or this is being changed or things are getting better. Things are not getting better. We have not convinced the masses, because if you go downtown to U of T to a Change My Mind event, everybody thinks that masks are amazing. Yeah. And you even say, okay, there's no mask mandate and there's no vax mandate. They will still vaccinate, and they will tell you to vaccinate. They will still wear a mask and yell at you for not wearing one.
Yeah, people even on social media, like, people will, post like, oh, now that I don't have to wear a mask, I'm gonna, like, I've seen this, like, I'm gonna, like, wear whatever lipstick I want. And people in the comments will be like, well, why are you not wearing a mask? Like, just because they've mandated that you don't have to doesn't mean you should listen. Mm-hmm. Like, what's wrong with you that you're listening? Are you agreeing with them? All of a sudden it's like, wow, how could the government do this to us? Yeah. And how are you listening? What's wrong with you? It's the opposite, It's a collective mindset issue. You ask students at Change My Mind events, how do you feel about the mandates? And a lot of them go, great, I love them. Yeah. Why? Oh, they're keeping everyone safe. But both vaccinated and unvaccinated people can get and spread COVID. Oh, well, it's keeping us safe. Like, or they have like some argument against that. I've heard everything. They're very adamant, to not question anything. Yeah. They want to stick with it because, the question your beliefs is terrifying. People don't want to do it. People can't hold differing opinions.
Yeah, it's hard to wake up to reality, because they're so afraid of reality that if they do see it and they finally realize how wrong everything is, then it's just going to shatter everything they've ever, had. Everything they ever, all of their convictions about COVID and all of their thoughts, it's like everything was untrue, and how stupid do they look, right?
And in the universities too, like, there's really one train of thought that's acceptable in a lot of ways. It's like it's not necessarily mandated, but there's one discourse that's like acceptable in a lot of fields and a lot of conversations. And if you offer something that differs from what the majority believe, then you're shunned. And, people might not agree. And sometimes people say things that I don't agree with. But, as long as they're not harassing or, hateful to anyone, if they're not causing any harm, like, you might not agree with them, but that's the point, right? Of academia specifically, you're going to hear differing opinions, and part of intellect is hearing them and going, you know what? I agree. You know what? I don't agree. This is why. That's intelligence. And if we shut that out, if we shut out all contrasting opinions that don't fit with the majority, then we're not going to have freedom of thought, first of all. We're not going to have diversity in our thought. So everyone's going to believe the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What's the fun in that?
No, that's not how society is supposed to function. That's not how a free society functions.
For sure.
Of course. So a few more things I wanted to discuss about this topic. Mm-hmm. And I think it's fitting, despite that we are, Ontario and university group specifically, but the thing that we're fighting here is, and I'm going to discuss this a little bit further in a different podcast probably, but we do have to bring up the World Economic Forum and the globalist agenda that they have set forth, because that's where they have infiltrated all levels of society, including, well, first they started with academia, so education, your public school boards, your presidents of universities, and all of those COVID relief systems. Everything that's there that has been implemented was infiltrated by this organization. Mm-hmm. And that is how they're controlling the narrative, is because they're able to tell the media, to tell the social media, to tell all these organizations on how to respond, on how to function. Oh, look, there's a problem. This is the solution. Oh, look, there's this. This is the solution. And it continuously pushes their narrative, and that's why everybody believes in it now. And these people are extremely smart. They have studied psychologies for decades. And they have been breaking down society for decades. And so just to see like a visible enemy, quote unquote, right, that has been implementing and changing the narrative and focusing on a globalist agenda to get everybody all collected and everyone going to be so happy and, all nothing, as they say. We're going to discuss them in more detail, but I did want to bring this up because they did not go anywhere, right? It's not like they were defeated and it's like, oh, look, these people were bad and our response was because of them. No, these people are on the spotlight and they're loved by government, they're loved by politicians, they're loved by these institutions that are implementing this. So nothing has been defeated. Don't assume that everything's going away. It is part of their plan so that you ease off and stop pressing on the gas in terms of your fighting spirit. Right? Because everybody is now thinking, oh, this is all ending. Everything's getting better. How many questions do we get on Change My Mind events?
Yeah.
Like, why are you guys here? The
all
mandates
the
are dropped. No, I still can't go.
Or like, well, we don't have to wear a mask starting Monday, right? So why are you still, or, vax passes are dropped in restaurants and stuff. So why are you still, well, they're still here in the school. Really? A lot of people don't check their email even. So they're like, really? Like they're still in the school? Like, yeah they're here till the end of the semester. Why? You know what? Ask yourself that. Why are they still here? You know what? Maybe it's not because they were following directions from, all these government organizations and then they dropped them. Now they have a reason to not follow them all of a sudden. But before they couldn't not follow them? No. They want something. That's why we have to keep fighting. This is far from over. I wish it was, Andriy. I wish that this was over. That's what we're fighting for. I just wish that I want to be so optimistic. And with effort and with time, when we keep fighting, like we can get somewhere, but it's also changing minds of people. It's not just policies. Just because policies are different. Like we said about the mask, like people are still going to fight each other on whether they wear one or not. It's mindset. Psychological effects still there. That's right. So this is a psychological effect, as you mentioned. And that is just part of the narrative because the narrative has not changed. And as long as that's not gone, then it doesn't matter if it's mandated or if it's forced because we're going to force it on ourselves. And so now let's quickly discuss what we can do to end this, what we can do to actually get rid of these policies for good and to change the narrative. What are some of the ways that we're fighting this? As an organization, you mean? Yeah. Yeah. So our biggest thing is that we go on campus. So a group of us, representatives at that school, and sometimes we go to other schools that we're not a part of, and we stand as a group, and we speak to students. So students have their signs. They come up to us and ask us, who are you? Why are you here? And we ask them, how do you feel about the vaccine mandates or the mandates in general? And they'll have a response. So they'll be like, I love them, I hate them, or it's usually I don't have an opinion, or I don't know, I've never thought about it. That's a very common one we get. And we speak to them. And when I speak to students, I'm very open to, I've heard lots of things. I'm very open to different opinions, and I'm cool with it. Like, I think everyone should believe what they believe, but I just offer my own perspective. And sometimes students will step back and be like, wait a minute. Like, I've had students that, started off like, oh, I love the mandates. And by the end, they're like, how can I get involved in CSUN? Like, I've had drastic moments like that, and we've had students come up to us like, thank you so much for what you're doing. And we've also had students that come, fuck you, you pieces of shit, get off our camp. We've had everything in between. I'm sure Andriy's also done these events. Oh, absolutely, yeah. It happens. Yeah. So that's our main thing that we do. We are not hiding. We are there. We are speaking to students, and it's nerve-wracking at first, but once you start, it's great. You feel like you're really making a difference, and we are changing minds. That's the point of what we do. Yeah. And we refuse to be invisible. People that have been deregistered or told they can't be on campus have been going onto campus anyway, refusing to be invisible, making themselves be seen, and causing people to question, why are these people being ostracized? Why are these people being isolated? Should they be? A lot of people have started asking themselves that because it's wrong, right? So that's what we do. We refuse to be invisible. And people think, I'm not, I'm just a student. I don't have that much power. I'm not, what can I do anyway? More than you think. That's always the answer I give. just you starting those conversations in your community. And I'm going to be honest, it's, you know, hard for me sometimes too to like speak up and share my opinions with people in my life that may not be like-minded, but I've started to, and it feels great, you know, to be the voice of change. You're that contrasting voice. You are, you know, you can be a part of that. One person in your community changed. Imagine that on a larger scale. All of us in our organization, we're a part of a big fight, and we're doing it together.
Yeah, that's right. And this is how we are going to win. Eventually, this is going to be a long fight. This is not going to be easy, and just like everybody's used to their, you know, fast validation and instant gratification with everything that's been involved. In addition to going out to change the minds and refusing to be invisible, we also practice non-compliance when we go to public places, right? I haven't worn a mask for months, for over half a year now, and I don't even have a mask anymore. It's like I refuse to put it on, and I'm going to continue living like 2019 to show people that this is an example of how we used to live, and this is the better way to go. Because you have to lead by example. You have to get involved with a community in which you can contribute your skills, your talents, and change the narrative together. Because the more people we get involved, the more people we have practicing these things on a regular basis, the faster we change this. And the more people are going to say, no, we don't like mandates. We don't like mandates. We don't need mandates. We don't need big baby government, you know, like, or big daddy government. We need a baby government that will not be taking away our rights. And that's what we have to change. That's what we have to do at the universities. That's what we have to do at the schools and in the corporate world. And again, we're starting with the universities, and we have been making great progress with changing the minds of students. We have been making great progress at York University very recently, and so we're going to continue doing that, and we're going to change the narrative together. So if you would like to get involved and would like to be part of this amazing fight, reach out to cson.ca, and
you won't regret it.
We'll talk to you soon.